Everything's on the table, and you got to look under every corner. Could a trade be in the works? Today on Locked On Chiefs.
From the land of the free and the home of the Chiefs, this is the Locked On Chiefs podcast.
You are Locked On Chiefs, your daily Kansas City Chiefs podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in, Chiefs Kingdom. Thanks for joining us. I'm Ryan Tracy. The far side over there is Chris Clark, and the man in the middle today is Matt Derrick from ChiefsDigest.com. We are excited for you. Lots to talk about here, and something new, a new wrinkle just kind of dropped. We'll get to that here in a second, but we're going to come back to some things that would surprise us, some things that wouldn't shock or shock. It's coming up later in the show. Before that, we are going to focus on two positions that I think are really at the prime picking spot and may just fall into the Chiefs' laps. But before that, everything's on the table at this point, Matt. A lot of rumor here. Dexter Lawrence asked for a trade from the New York Giants. I have seen nothing but a constant flow of people theorizing about, could the Chiefs go do this? First off, your gut impression about, could the Chiefs even be in on this kind of deal for a player of this caliber?
I mean, every time that I say that the Chiefs couldn't possibly be on a deal of this caliber, I mean, they'll find a way to force themselves into the conversation. But I do not see how this makes any sense whatsoever for the Chiefs. You know, he's got 2 years left on his deal. The Giants would have to eat some of that, but you've got base salaries of 18.5, 15.5 for the next 2 seasons, and he's not happy with that money. He wants more. He's also going to be 29 in November. And the last time I checked, I mean, Dexter Lawrence isn't Chris Jones. I'm not even sure if he's Chris Jones at this point in their respective careers. So I don't know if it really adds up. I mean, the production that you would get for what money he's got on the books versus the fact that he wants to get paid for 29, 30, 31 seasons, maybe 32 seasons. That's not the business the Chiefs are in right now. They're not in the business of paying guys who are at that point in their careers, and especially not their own guys. So it doesn't add up. If you want defensive tackle help, you got pick 29. Get a guy that's going to cost you a fraction of the money for the next 5 years.
Well, and the fraction of the money for 2 years, or, you know, even the money you're talking about for $33 million, you're going to be costing a fraction of that for 5 years if you get somebody at 29. So definitely don't see how this is possible that the Chiefs would be making a move like this. Dexter Lawrence just doesn't seem to really fit what they would do. If this is a team like maybe say like the Denver Broncos, and I don't necessarily mean them specifically, but a team that hasn't paid their rookie quarterback, then maybe you can go make this type of move. But this isn't a move that you're going to do, generally speaking, with a veteran quarterback that you're paying over $45 million a year. So I don't see how this is possible that they're working. I have to throw this out because I keep seeing this reported, and I know we didn't talking about this one, but Trent Williams is also somebody that everybody keeps saying the Chiefs are interested in. And I'm sitting here going, you guys are nuts. There's no way that's going to happen. Mainly because of money. I still don't see them wanting to just sit Simmons after 1 year.
And it's a lot of the same issues that we're talking about here. I mean, the Chiefs don't have the money under the salary cap to fit either one of these guys if they wanted them to. Right. The other part of it is that Trent Lawrence is going to be 38 this season. I mean, we're not talking about, this isn't 5 years ago when you're trying to get, you know, age 32 Trent and you're Trent Williams and you're trying to bring him in because you have literally no tackles on the roster that you've signed. A lot has changed since then. And, you know, one of them obviously is that he's 37 going on 38. And two is that you've got Josh Simmons, you've got Jalen Moore, you got a couple of tackles, you got a couple of young guys. I mean, and like Esapole and Chu Godric. I mean, Ethan Driscoll. You've got 5 deep of either starting level talent or 3 backup level talent guys. And I get, you know, everybody wants an upgrade, but once again, you're hearing a lot of this speculation about offensive tackle from the national level. And honestly, some really bad analysis from the national level, because I keep talking to people when I go, why are the speculation and rumor that the Chiefs are interested in Trent Williams or they're interested in using pick number 9 and an offensive tackle. And inevitably it comes back to these people don't realize that Jalen Moore is on the roster, or these people didn't watch Josh Simmons play last year. Because there is, I'm gonna say it. I mean, this is one of my many hot takes I have about this whole topic of the offensive tackle, and I got a lot of hot takes about it.
Let's
but
go.
One, there is not a tackle in this draft that's better than Josh Simmons. So why would you draft someone in this year's draft under the theory of moving Josh Simmons to right tackle? If you draft a tackle in this draft, you're putting him at right tackle and leaving Josh Simmons exactly where he is. Absolutely. So I really feel like at this point this is a barometer for Chiefs fans. If somebody is telling you that the Chiefs need to go offensive tackle at 9 or they need to get Trent Williams, that's an indication that you should not listen to this person for any advice on the Chiefs whatsoever, because they don't know anyone in the organization that's doing anything, and 2, they haven't looked at a roster recently.
Well, now that we've triggered Matt on the offensive side of the ball, when it comes to Dexter Lawrence in this particular situation, I did want to contrast here. He's not the same kind of player. He would be a compliment to Chris Jones because he doesn't produce like Chris Jones. He did put up 34 pressures last year. Decent. Chris put up 63. This is not a Batman and Robin. This is a Batman and the motorcycle that he rode in on. That's basically the comparison here. And 2.5 sacks last year, not getting home either for the cost. And I agree with you. It just doesn't seem like it's a good use of resources, Matt. So I think it has to be, in my opinion, a draft cycle aspect here. And honestly, if they did it, it would only be for one reason in my mind, is that Chris is already at 32 years old, but this would be a single contract. This would be, as you said, 3 seasons at most that he could even be on the field. So I just don't see that it's a wise investment. Is there something I'm missing?
There's nothing that you're missing. And I know there's a lot of things about Brett Veach. He might take some chances. He might inevitably sign a guy to a 3rd contract or a 4th contract for big money going into his 29, 30, 31 seasons. That's a guy who hasn't played for them before. That's also going to be a guy who is already being fitted for a gold jacket. Brett Veach isn't going to go out and make a move for a guy that you're paying high price at low production. I mean, like you said, half the pressures of Chris Jones and 0.5 sacks were at last year, right? I mean, this is not a guy coming off a monster season. And I keep hearing a lot of these proposed trade scenarios for the Chiefs that people seem to think either they make great ideas or they think that these two teams are talking about them when I hear there's nothing going on. This Vikings, Jonathan Grenard, kind of trade too and everything. Another buy high for a guy who's low. I mean, there's no reason why you should be overpaying for any of these players in the draft. I mean, especially because, once again, you can get probably the same production at a fraction of the price in the draft. So don't give up your draft picks. Don't make some crazy deals and everything. I'm not saying that Brett Veach might not make some trades, but I think it's going to be for more draft picks, not for aging veterans. That's not what they're in the business of doing right now. They're trying to get younger. They're trying to get more affordable. They're trying to get cheaper. They're not trying to, add albatrosses heading into their 30 that they can wear around their neck.
Fort Knox is closed. They don't need to go there, but they do need to go out and get these 2 positions. They're coming up next.
This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. Financial stress is something a lot of people are carrying right now, and it's not just about numbers. It can affect your sleep, your relationships, and your overall mental health in ways that build up over time. And the reality is, struggling with money doesn't mean that you failed. Sometimes it just means you haven't had the right kind of support. It's something I've thought about, how easy it is to put pressure on yourself financially without really thinking about it. The stress that comes with trying to figure things out on your own. The expectations you feel to have everything together and how that pressure can spill into other areas of your life. Therapy isn't about financial advice. It's about working through stress, the anxiety, and the emotions that come with it. With over 30,000 licensed therapists and more than 6 million people served, BetterHelp makes it easier to get matched and start focusing on what you need. When life gets overwhelming, therapy can help. Sign up and get a 10% off at betterhelp.com/lockedon. That's betterhelp.com/lockedon.
We are back, and folks, if you want all the information you can get, go check out the Rogue APC draft guide. It is out and available right now. You can get it at bit.ly/draft26. Use that code LOC26. Get yourself that discount. We would appreciate it. You can find Chris over at KC Chiefs Corner. I'm at NFL 33 and RGR Football. And Matt is where Matt always is at Chiefs Digest. And 41 is the mic. And Matt, I think you're on the same wavelength as me here, but I just want to double check. Offensive tackle off the board at 9, right? I think cornerback is a fallback position. It really comes down to two things. And if everything goes according to plan, someone else will take some offensive tackles, which will make this work, because there's 3 edge rushers and there's 3 wide receivers that are in play. And I think those 6 picks plus 2 linemen leaves us in a precarious position for the Chiefs. I think the wide receiver and that edge have to be the priorities. Do you agree, or is there something else that should creep in there?
Yeah, it certainly feels like that's where the momentum is going. And if you take Brett Veach at his word, which I normally do, I mean, there's not saying that not sometimes that maybe he's trying to put some things out there that he wants people to know, and he has played it pretty close to the vest about, you know, who's the guys that they are targeting in the draft. They've done a pretty good job of that over the years. But he said last week at the owners' meetings, you know, that, hey, it's defensive end, it's receiver, it's cornerback that we're looking at number 9. And that makes sense because those are the positions at which there's value at premium positions and there's good players at those positions. I don't see the Chiefs taking, you know, Brett Veach doesn't seem like a non-premium value position in the top 10. So even if a Sonny Styles falls to 9 or a Caleb Downs safety, you know, falls to 9, I just don't see Brett Veach going in that direction. I mean, he knows that you don't get these picks very often. And hey, those might be great players, but if you get a chance to have a first round value edge rusher, receiver, or corner on a rookie contract, that's what you do. I mean, it's what makes the most sense. And I'm still, despite, you know, there's some smoke going in different directions, I'm still convinced that the number 1 player that the Chiefs are targeting is Reuben Bain. Could be, you know, false signals again, but that's certainly the sense I get is that that's the number 1 player on their board. So who's 2? I'm not sure it's another edge rusher. I think receiver would be the next line there. And what's really interesting is, you know, that we have seen another name enter the mix. You know, Carnell Tate's been mentioned quite a bit. I actually think Mekhi Lemon is probably the best, you know, fit for the Chiefs at that spot. But Jordyn Tyson has been mentioned now by a couple of people that normally are pretty close to Brett Veach. And obviously Peter Schrager had him in his mock draft on Tuesday. And that's a guy that just met with Brett Veach in his villa in Phoenix last week. So maybe he came out of it with a little inside info. I don't know. But the Chiefs are looking at a lot of receivers. It certainly seems that there's some smoke in that direction, but at this point, I'd be stunned if the Chiefs at 9, if they stay at 9, that it wasn't a edge rusher or a receiver.
And that makes a ton of sense. You can go either of those directions. The question is going to be, who do you want to go? And when you start looking at how the drafts have shook out, Bain is usually gone by the Chiefs pick. But the one that I haven't seen gone by the Chiefs pick would be Jordyn Tyson. It's usually Carnell Tate is already gone. And then if the Chiefs are really interested in Tyson at that point, then you're looking at a scenario where you could be taking the highest drafted player since before Patrick Mahomes was drafted. And it would be giving him a wide receiver. But there are questions there. There's a reason why that Tyson is not looked at as maybe the number 1 receiver by some. Do you think that they're worried about that at all, Matt?
If not, they probably should be. But again, every team's going to have their own first round grades. You know,
Yep.
it seems at this point now, granted, you know, we still don't have perfect information. Teams aren't posting their boards, but the feel is certainly that if you're talking about maybe the top 15 players in the draft, which we'll see, you know, next week when we get to talk to Brett Veach, what he says about how many players that they have a first round grade on this year. Maybe it's less than 15, but Tyson's kind of on that cusp. I think there's going to be teams that have a first round grade on him. Some are going to have a second round grade on him. That's unlike a guy like Bain, where I think that almost everybody's going to have a first round grade on him. There might be some of the other receivers where maybe more teams do. Maybe more teams are going to have a first round grade on Tate, first round grade on Lemon than they do on Tyson. But, we don't know. And it could very well be that the Chiefs, hey, they look at this and they say, hey, Tyson's the number one guy on their board. If I'm not mistaken, I mean, I think there's a little bit more questions about, Tate, because that's a guy that if you look at it, I mean, he's one of those guys that to me could really be boom or bust. It's because, he's someone that, hey, is a little bit below average production and athleticism for what you normally think of as a first round receiver. But we've also seen those guys can either be really good players or not. I mean, Odell Beckham Jr. had below expected and below average production and athleticism, supposedly, but he's a star. Other guys in that category are not stars, even if they were taken in the first round.
I think it's in the eye of the beholder. I would not categorize Tate as underperforming in either of those, but you do have a significant point there because in that offense, he's never been wide receiver one. And I do think that's something that carries over into the pro game. That's the big drawback for me. I actually have Tyson as my top wide receiver in terms of grade. I think he's quick out of his cuts, and I think that's the thing that Chiefs need. The interesting thing for me, Matt, is both the guys that we're talking about are outliers. Tyson is much bigger than the average wide receiver that the Chiefs are interested in, even Rashee Rice. He's night and day closer to the average Chief guy than Reuben Bain is, because Steve Spagnuolo is known to be a length dude that has minimums that Reuben Bain just does not hit. So I guess the big thing for me is there anything that you've noticed or heard about changing their risk averseness against guys that are not their typical type of player?
Yeah, it is interesting. And, and one of the things I've heard, as well, how it pertains to Bain and everything is that, it's more about the other intangibles that maybe he brings and some of the things that he's really, really good at that Spagnuolo likes. We talk about how he's maybe a little shorter, arms much shorter than Spags would normally like. But weight-wise, size-wise, bulk-wise, he's kind of like, he's Frank Clark with short arms to a large degree. And motor-wise, I think he's kind of in that same ballpark too and everything. His bend is really ridiculous, and that's something that Brett Veach, values overall. And here's the thing is that you look at this, and this is another thing that we kind of touch on. And, Brett Veach very nicely, I thought last week, said this is a unique draft. I thought that was his polite way of saying that there's maybe like two guys in this draft that we got a first round grade on. And if we could draft at number 2, we'd be great, but we're not, we're at 9. So, it's not as deep as a draft at the top as it normally is. And, and hey, there's a million reasons why, NIL is a big part of that, obviously, but things are still shaking out there, but it's just not as deep as at the top. All of the top guys have questions. There's not really anybody outside of maybe the linebackers, maybe Caleb Towns. And again, we're just talking about nothing but Ohio State guys. Right. There's no flaws there apparently, but it's just everybody's got a flag of some sort. Maybe they're red flags, maybe they're beige flags. But then you get into the other parts of it. To me, maybe the Chiefs are. They brought in David Bailey. They're looking at him, obviously, as and they've had him as one of their 30 visits. Maybe they're going to be interested in that. I just look at a guy and I'm like, wait a minute, this is the total opposite of a Steve Spagnuolo guy and a Joe Cullen guy, because he's really tiny. He's a 3-4 linebacker, basically. He's basically Josh Uche. And we saw that the Chiefs Steve Spagnuolo could not figure out how to use Josh Uche. And that was an experiment to see if, what Steve Spagnuolo could do with a guy like that. And the answer was put him on the bench, because Josh Uche produces for other people, but he didn't for the Chiefs. So how would a guy like Bailey, and guys that are closer to 240, 245 rather than 265, how are they going to fit in with this Chiefs defensive front?
Only if they change it up, which I know Joe Cullen would be for, but I don't know that Steve Spagnuolo is. So that would be a shock if they change the defensive front. We have a bunch of other ones for you coming up next. I think I will jump right into it and start it off, because this is meant to be kind of fun and really kind of shotgun effect here, Matt. So Shock or chalk? Would it surprise you, or would it just feel like it's the right thing to do if the Chiefs traded out at 9 and were able to weasel some kind of maneuver, even though there might not be a whole lot of interest to move up? Would it shock you?
It wouldn't shock me. I mean, especially if Bain's gone at 9 and they haven't moved up to go get him. And I'm with you. I'm increasingly feeling like you may have to go to 6 to maybe guarantee you're going to get a shot at Bain. And who knows? Maybe the Chiefs are, maybe once again, I sometimes ascribe some 4D chess moves to general managers. Maybe a lot more sophistication to their strategies than they're actually putting into it. But maybe Brett's trying to bait some people into, thinking he's going one way so that he can go another. But hey, if something crazy happened and Reuben Bain's gone, maybe a couple of wide receivers are gone, the ones that he likes. Yeah, I mean, I could see him moving back. I can maybe see it moving back in the right scenario if he feels like there's 4 players left at that point that they've got a first-round grade on, and he moves back 3 spots, picks up some currency, picks up some more draft picks, and gets a guy that he still wants, that's a win-win. I could see that happening. I mean, the tendency we always think is that Brett Veach is going to move up. I don't know if the tendency is there this year, because I know he wants more picks both now and in the future, and making the jump from 9 to 6 or even to 7 to get somebody, that's costly at the top of the draft. You can do it when you're going maybe from 32 to 31 or 31 to 30. Going from 9 to 7 is actually a little bit more of a bump.
Yeah, it's going to be a huge deal. And my question to you is, if they do trade back, do you think that it actually makes them more likely, and the way I guess I see it is that it makes them more likely to try to trade up at 29, because you're trying to get one of those guys that falls that maybe you have not a first round grade on, but a high second round grade? Would that shock you, or would you expect that?
And that's why, I mean, if Brett follows his logic and follows his philosophy, then I don't think moving up from 9 is as a priority for him. He is going to get a first round player. And the idea of just moving up so you can get a different first round player, that's not really in Brett Veach's mojo. But what is if you're sitting at 29, you've got, a player that you've got a first round grade on that falls down and now is below 20. That's when Brett Veach likes to make his move. He did it obviously for Trent McDuffie. He's tried to do it in some other cases too, and some players have fallen, and a couple of times just wasn't able to get it done, but it wasn't for a lack of trying. That's where I could see something happening. If the Chiefs are 29 and all of a sudden the player that they really want is still on the board at 22 or 23. Yeah, I think Brett Veach is going to be on the phone trying to get something done. And that's the much more likely deal. And it's a more affordable deal. I mean, jumping from 29 to 23 is probably going to cost you less than it would to go from 9 to 6.
Yeah, quite a bit. Okay, so given what we talked about in the first or the second segment here, wide receiver edge, obviously we're talking a lot about them. I don't think it stops at one player. So shock or chalk, Matt, they double dip at one of those 2 positions.
Possible, although I think the double dip, if they're going to do it in the first round, I think it would be more likely to be like D tackle, 2 defensive linemen, maybe just 1 inside, 1 outside. I'd be probably really surprised if they went like corner or receiver. But D-line, D tackle, that's I think the distinct possibility, because those are both huge needs.
I don't mean double dip in the first round. I mean in the draft. Do they come away with 2 receivers, or do they come away with 2 edges?
I think that definitely probably 2 edges, because I mean, we've been talking about, you look at this roster, they need 4 to 5 new defensive linemen on this roster. They've signed 1. So they need 3 to 4 more. So I think coming out with 2 edges and a defensive tackle, something like that, probably very likely. 2 receivers would probably surprise me, especially, because they do have a chunk. And I think that, if anything, I think the last couple of years has shown them that they need to whittle down the receiver room. They can't go into a season, with another 7 wide receivers, and just chewing through those guys. They need to have, 5 receivers that they trust, and that's it.
So my question to you, shock or chalk, is that the Chiefs are going to make a move and maybe pick up an extra 3rd round pick to try to get more starters that can help them in 2026.
I mean, I think that's probably distinctly possible. I would not be stunned about that. Again, Brett Veach wants more picks, both in 2026 and in the future. So I think he's going to be fairly active. And that, like I said, wouldn't surprise me if they made some moves to pick up some extra picks for this year, then maybe move some of those picks to push them back into future years. You name it. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if, I mean, my bold take would probably be that I think Brett is going to try and come out of this draft with a net of 2 to 3 more picks than he had when he started this year's draft. May not all be this year, but I think he's going to want to try and build that currency. I don't think he's going to want, they have 8 picks right now in this year's draft. I don't think he's like wanting to pick 6 players and not pick up any extra picks for the future. I think he's going to want to make all those picks and then some.
I think the 3rd and 4th rounds next year are going to be a perfect place to go get additional picks. Last one for me. It just comes down to a gut feeling. And in the end, do they add anything in the offensive line room in this draft?
I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, there is still the one need, which is, a right tackle for the future. It's not as immediate as the other needs. They've got immediate needs at defensive line, corner. I'll even say receiver, although receiver is another position that you're drafting for the future as well, because outside of Xavier Worthy and Jalen Royals and one more year at Tyquan Thornton, you really don't have anybody signed up for 27 and beyond. I mean, this is a contract year for Rashee Rice. So yeah, I mean, all those positions are both now and future needs. Offensive tackle is a future need. But if you think there's a guy out here who can be your right tackle of the future, and it's somebody that you can get late in the 1st round, maybe into the 2nd round, I could absolutely see them going that direction. You've got a chance to solidify your offensive line for maybe the next half decade and beyond. I think you would like to do that if you're Brett Veach, but it's not the biggest priority. If it comes to you, yes, but I'm not sure it's their top priority.
Shock or chalk, do they actually get a Travis Kelce replacement?
They need to, and I'm still not sold that that's on the roster. But
and I say replacement with quotations because you're not going to replace him. But
oh, exactly. No, I mean, if you get a guy that can give you an 800-yard season at some point in the future, job well done. Congratulations. I mean, that's about the best you could hope for. Getting the guy that's going to get you 1,400 yards or 1,000 yards for 7 straight seasons, probably not going to happen. So let's just put that on pie in the sky. I mean, this is an Andy Reid offense. It runs through the tight end. You've been fortunate that you've been able to run this team with one tight end for a long, long time. They know that going to the future, you do not replace Travis Kelce with one dude. You're not replacing Travis Kelce with Jared Wiley or a Jake Breeningstool. You might replace Travis Kelce with those 2 guys plus another guy. But you got to keep looking for somebody, because I'm not convinced that they have the number 1 tight end on this roster yet. And until they do, you got to keep taking shots at it.
We're going to talk about that coming up in just a little bit. Matt, thanks for your time. We appreciate you being with us as always in the middle of the week.
Man, anytime. Although I like the way you I mean, I'm not sure I liked it, but I see the way you work shock chalk in there, Ryan. I mean, I know what you were doing.
Oh, yes. Hey, we have more. It was a pro day. It was fun. Everybody, have a great day. Have a great day, everybody. We appreciate your time. Check out the draft guide and KC Chiefs Corner, as well as Chiefs Digest. Have a good one. We'll catch you next time.